Welcome back to Realigned and Unfiltered. We're so glad that you're here. Today, we're diving into the third agreement, don't make assumptions. A deceptively simple teaching that asks us to pause, get curious, and step out of the stories our minds so effortlessly create. In a world where our nervous systems are constantly scanning for meaning, where our histories whisper their own interpretations, and where spiritually we're always balancing intuition with projection, this agreement invites us into a deeper kind of clarity, one rooted in honesty, resonance, and the courage to actually ask instead of guess. So let's explore what really happens when we stop filling in the blanks, how assumptions shape our relationships and our identity, and what becomes possible when we choose understanding over illusion.
This is Realigned and Unfiltered.
Together, we're peeling back the layers, exploring consciousness, and transforming life's messiness into meaning.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to today's episode of Realigned and Unfiltered. Hey, Carlie.
Hey, hey, everyone.
Yes, it's so nice to get back in recording. I love these moments where we get to just come here, connect with all of you, and have fun conversations. So Carlie and I are, we have so much fun doing this.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun, and I just love watching how many people are tuning in and watching,
Yeah.
and I'm loving the feedback that we're getting. It's so fun because these are the conversations we love having, and now
Mhm.
we're getting to have these conversations knowing that other people are tuning in. The only thing that I feel like we're missing is actually getting to chat back and forth with other people, get people's opinions, get people feeling. And I would really love it if those of you who are listening and tuning in would leave comments for us. The comments are starting to really pick up on TikTok, and it has been so much fun going back and forth with everybody, especially people who don't agree. I think that's a blast. That's honestly
Yeah.
been so great. It's been so great. So, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're getting something from it, we would so love to hear that in the comment section, and we will chat back. Seriously, we will.
Yes, absolutely. It gives us feedback and also lets us know, how much you guys are enjoying this. So we could keep creating the kinds of videos that you guys enjoy and want to hear more on. So
Yeah. Yeah. So far I'm hearing really good things about the agreements. What about you, Dee?
yeah.
Yeah.
And today we're going to actually go into the third agreement, and that
Yes.
agreement is don't make assumptions.
Ooh.
I think we
Such
can
a juicy
all
one.
relate. Yeah, I think we could all relate to this one because we all tend to assume that um, people think like us or feel like us or
Mm.
even understand us, understand our pain or where we're coming from. But we're going to dive deeper into to provide some perspective on that, some insight on that, and why it's hard to actually not assume.
Yeah, yeah, it's not just the old saying, right? Assuming makes an ass out of you and me. We've probably all grown up hearing that for so long.
Hmm.
And it's funny because it's a it's a cute little thing. It's a cute little saying for us to try not to assume, but let's be honest, we all do. We all
Yeah.
do. We assume meaning. We assume we know what other people are thinking. We assume we know what the outcome is going to be. I like to think sometimes of assuming as also creating expectations, which I think we'll
Mm,
get more into.
yeah.
But this is it's a real detriment, and it's so
Yeah.
interesting that I feel like one of the agreements we've maybe made with ourselves is that our perspective is the perspective,
Uh-huh.
and
Hmm.
so what if it's not? What if we walked around with this new agreement not to make assumptions? Then what would we do? Would we ask more?
Yeah. And I think that's something to explore and also diving into why we even make assumptions.
I feel like this is a really good one, Dee, for you. I feel like it's a really helpful. I think people are going to really want to have an explanation. Okay, why do we make assumptions? Is there a brain reason for that? And I know because I've read your notes that there are brain reasons for that. And I think it would be really helpful for you to explain to people why it is that happens.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. So let's dive into like why the brain makes assumptions. And I think I just want to start off by saying, our brain, it's all of our intuitive kind of innate reactions is thinking about they're not trying to hurt us, right? Our brain is not trying to hurt you. It's not trying to sabotage our lives or our relationships. Our brain, it doesn't wait for certainty. It
Right.
uses something called predictive coding. And it's those predictive responses, if you want to think about it like the assumptions, to fill in gaps, which means that our brain is not seeing reality directly. It's predicting what's happening and it's filling the gaps because
Yeah.
again, there's no clarity. It's filling the gaps based on our past memories, based on unresolved emotions, based on our subconscious beliefs, or even inherited agreements from our childhood and our ancestry. I mean, we
Well,
could get deep into that.
and also, and maybe this is kind of Raz related, but it's suggesting that this is what's going to happen because this is what usually happens, right?
Mm,
As you said, predictive coding, I automatically thought of predictive texting. So, I mean, I'm old
I
enough
love that.
I'm old enough to come from the time before texting when we would write each other letters in the mail. Yeah. We've come through all the different incarnations of texting, right? And at
Mhm.
some point, our phones got smart enough to say, usually after this word, you say that word. And they start
Mhm.
offering you the top three words that usually come after that word. And so much of the time, we can just kind of tab across. I find with my emails, it's wild. I can just press tab a bunch of times
Yep.
because what I say is so predictable. And
Yeah.
it's funny when we think about this, that is exactly it. Our computers or our phones, our texting are predicting what we're going to say based on what we usually say. And it's so interesting to think about
Yeah.
it like this. Our brains are predicting what's going to happen based on what we know to have happened in the past, but it doesn't really allow for then the nuance of present moment awareness, present
Mm,
moment thinking. It doesn't allow the nuance
right.
of change.
Right. Right. Yeah,
So interesting.
exactly. When you hear a certain tone of tone of voice and you immediately feel attacked, right? It's again, it's that predictive coding that's coming in. Or also like when we're imagining a situation that hasn't even happened and we already feel hurt. And that goes back to like the dreaming state, right? We're bringing in our um from from the dream state into the waking state, like our imagination is flowing from one stage to the other,
Yeah.
and we're bringing in this emotions, so we're already feeling a certain way and they haven't even happened yet.
I actually have a really great example of this exact thing that happened this week. So there's a girl in my neighborhood, teen girl. She's so great with my dogs. She walks my dogs all the time. And I'm going away in a few days. And so I sent her a text and said, hey, when you get a chance, can you pop by the house? Because I wanted to ask her in person if I could hire her to take care of my pets for a couple of days while we're away. So she texts me back, why, what's going on? Is everything okay? But I didn't see the message because I was cooking. So the poor thing shows up at my
Mm.
house, sweating and
Oh yeah.
red and nervous. And she walked right in and she said, what's going on? Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, sweetie, no, I just, and then it hit me. She maybe associates, I
Yeah.
need to speak with you as you're in trouble. And I
Mhm.
remember being 14 and being exactly
Yeah.
that way. Anytime I was being spoken to, you know,
Mhm.
it was that I had done something or I was in trouble or whatever, and I remembered that feeling so clearly
Mhm.
in my body, and I just looked at her and I just gave her the biggest hug. I was like, "We
Oh.
need to restore your nervous system right now. You thought you
Yeah.
were in trouble." She goes, "I spent the whole walk here going through any and
Oh.
everything that I have said or done in relation to you, wondering if I'd done something wrong."
Oh
And I
my
thought,
gosh.
"You poor thing. I just wanted to ask you if I could hire you for the weekend."
Oh
But
my gosh.
this is exactly that.
Mhm.
When you're used to hearing, "I need to speak with you," as you're in trouble, you automatically assume when you hear that you're in trouble, even if the
Yeah.
person who said it to you has never gotten you in trouble before, has always loved you and appreciated you and, taken care of you. You put things from anywhere else in your life into every relationship. It's so
Right.
interesting. It was, as a psychologist, I see this all the time, but to have experienced it in my personal life and then be brought back
Mhm.
to my own teen life, I thought, "Oh, wow, yeah." So we're just talking about this
Yeah.
now, and it made me think of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, to your point, the nervous system doesn't distinguish, right, from a real threat from an imagined one. And I think
Right.
that's why also bringing the imagination back into this and understanding that our imagination and its power, the power that it has, it's not just like, oh, that person lives in their imagination. No, our bodies don't understand and know the difference between an imagined threat and a real one. That's why things like visualization are so real. I mean, and we've brought this up before, and that's why also, like, back to assumptions, they create those real feelings of anxiety, of tension, of conflict, or sadness.
It's this predictive experience, right?
Right.
He didn't just assume she was in trouble for no reason. She assumed she was in trouble because she's associated those words, "I need to speak with you," with historically being in trouble, I think. I mean, I asked
Right.
then for clarification, and she said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
usually what's said to me before I'm in trouble." Um, and it's like, yeah, so your brain took this prediction and
Hmm.
it brought it into your present from the past, and then you created all this anxiety and all this fear around being in trouble, and you created a scenario where I'm maybe mad at you,
Right.
which to me is so funny because she's such a beloved character in my life, and I could
Yeah.
never imagine being angry with her. But she could imagine it because
Hmm.
in other contexts in her life, that's been
Right.
the case.
I think that's why, when we are not aware and conscious, like, of our assumptions, that's how they could become emotionally dangerous. And I'm
Mhm.
using the word dangerous because it can turn very negative very quick if you run with an assumption and
Mhm.
don't go back to get clarity or verify, what's true.
Right, right. Verifying what's true. That brings me to the point. A quote from the book. He says, "Because we are afraid to ask for clarification, we make assumptions. We make assumptions and believe we are right about the assumptions, and then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong." So we
Right.
have this tendency, just as humans, this is just a human observation, to
Yeah.
assume a truth and then get defensive of the truth and then create conflict with another person that really doesn't need to be there. Like
Yeah.
9 out of 10 probably
Hmm.
doesn't need to be there, but we are
Right.
afraid to ask for clarification or we don't feel like we need to.
Right. And I think, to bring in a little bit always, I'm not gonna even say this anymore. I'm always gonna bring an NLP into every conversation we have. But it's also it goes into the way we filter reality and we filter information in the programming. Each person is shaped by different beliefs, different values, different nervous system wiring,
Mhm,
different
mhm,
traumas and
uh-huh.
and different childhoods. So when we are aware of that, I'm coming from this perspective, or this other person is coming from a different, it creates a clash of different maps of reality. It's when, like, these two maps collide, and then the clash of those causes misunderstandings, the hurt, the conflict, and then that creates, emotional distance. I mean, people that are married, I know, if you're married more than 2 years, I would say that you will at some point. I think the first 2 years is probably all fun and stuff, but, then you get kinda into, like, okay, you start assuming, fights come up, or, arguments, I don't know, fights, whatever, but, the next argument you have, or the next discussion that you have, you kind of go back, oh, well, he did this last time, or she did this last time, and you start bringing into the present, and then it just becomes a pattern in your relationship. And that's
Right.
again where why I bring up where it could become, I guess, I mean, dangerous. I would use that word dangerous, but problematic, right? Because it becomes routinistic, it becomes a routine, it becomes a instilled pattern, and then you're running that program, moving forward with it, and it's running your
Right.
life.
Well, and I think your word danger is correct because our nervous system registers threat, right? Our nervous
Mm.
system registers something is wrong. We activate, and then we activate to fight, to flight. Maybe we need to freeze, right?
Yeah.
We activate because our threat detection has come up. And so it does become dangerous because it's actually
Yeah.
dangerous for our health to live in that state.
Right.
It's dangerous for our relationships because we're constantly poised then for a
Mm.
fight. It's
Mhm.
dangerous for our own life because we're constantly poised to run away, right? What if we
Mm.
just if you have a strong flight response, what if you ran away every time something got hard? What if you ran
Mm.
away every time a conversation was supposed to happen that was potentially scary? You wouldn't have any depth in relationship. You wouldn't have much depth in your life, right? So
Yeah.
it is dangerous to to be in sympathetic state all the time. It is
Yeah.
dangerous also because you don't have clear thinking, and when you don't have clear
Right.
thinking, you can't then connect with the person and maybe then do what Don Miguel Ruiz is saying to do: ask questions,
Mm.
clarify, check what that person means. Don't just assume.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of our assumptions, they come again like from our programming and our, what we've been past memories, past decisions and things like that, but also after major life shifts. And I want to bring this in because it's very close to
Oh,
my heart. I work
okay.
in my work in neuroalchemy. I work with pregnancy loss moms, right? And after an event in your life, or if you've lost your baby, a woman's identity, right? A woman's nervous system, her whole worldview, her whole emotional capacity, her sense of safety, all of that transform. And often, that person, that woman, that mother will assume others understand her, they
Mm,
empathize with her,
mhm.
they respond, they should be responding with a lot of sensitivity towards her, and that they can hold space for her and really grasp what she's feeling. But the reality of that is most people have never even walked that path. They've never, they don't even know what it feels like maybe to even be pregnant or, carry a baby. So that
Mhm.
assumption that most women carry, that they should understand, it leads that mother deeper into disappointment, deeper into feeling
Right.
completely isolated, and
Right.
putting expectations that others are not going to meet. They can't meet, right? And
Right.
it creates that conflict.
Yeah, and that's such a tender
It is.
loss. I
It
mean,
is.
we
Yeah.
can zoom out a little bit, having been a grief therapist, we all experience death and loss. We
Mm,
all experience death and loss,
right.
but that's a different kind. That is a
Yeah.
different kind. And even if we all experience grief and loss, we all experience grief and loss in our own way and in our own worldview. So where I may see death as a beautiful opportunity for the person moving on. And so I feel so
Mm,
happy for them while sad for me. And I'm able to sort of hold those two things. Not
right.
everybody has that. And
Right.
so I may deal with death and loss in a different way that may actually make people feel a little bit invalidated in the depth of their grief, right? And
Mm-hmm.
certainly it's not my intention. So I've had to really hone and tune into, what does grief mean for you? What does this loss
Yeah.
feel like for you? Let me get really specific about asking, what is this like for you?
Mm,
And I think a lot of people are so uncomfortable to do that.
yeah.
Either A, you assume, here we go, either A, you assume that everybody experiences grief and loss the way that you do,
Hmm.
or you don't know what to say. And especially with a grieving mother, how do you even say, how do I help you? How do you even say, what
Right.
does it feel like? Most people don't want to go anywhere near that amount of pain because it's
Right.
scary. It's scary pain, right?
Hmm.
So, because I have the privilege of getting to walk with people through the most intimate moments of their lives, I'm quite comfortable asking, what is it like for you? And how can I
Hmm.
tune what I do for you? But most people don't know how to do that. So they
Right.
just do one of these. And then this poor grieving person, whether it be mother or zoomed out any loss, they're left feeling alone. Like
Right.
everybody should be holding me in such a way, and they're not.
Right.
We
Right.
find ourselves using shoulds towards other people.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's where this third agreement of, don't make assumptions really becomes more like of a spiritual practice where you
Mm,
decide, okay, this is the moment where I'm realizing I'm not, you know, my expectations are not going to be met. I'm continuously being disappointed. I'm continuously feeling, um, dissatisfied or whatever it is. I'm going to step more into truth. I'm going to step into presence. I'm going to
yeah.
step more inside of myself, inside of my relationship, and really kind of take it in from a different perspective. And I also, want to just offer a different perspective in my world of kind of, in neuroalchemy I do a lot of everything is following the engineering mindset, the engineering industry, because that's the background that I come from.
That's right.
And so yeah, and I kind of want to bring that in because this is how I put together the programs and everything that I do for women that I help. So I've worked in the engineering industry. I've managed engineering processes, and I just want to offer that the perspective that this isn't really just spiritual wisdom, because like in engineering, assumptions, they're never treated as truth. They're placeholders. So when engineers are designing something and they create an assumption, oh, I assume, this is going to happen if I do this type of calculation or whatnot. But that assumption is treated as a placeholder. That assumption is going to need to be verified, it needs to be validated, or it needs to be replaced, because an assumption that goes unchecked is going to lead to errors in the work. It's going to create more rework. It's going to create system failures. So, an assumption, it can be used, but it only can be used temporarily. And then it requires verification. It's a
Ah,
placeholder. It's not going to be truth. It requires verification.
I love
So,
that so much. I love that so, so very much. It's the same
yeah,
when, let's say, I'm reading research for
right.
a specific mental health treatment. So we have this assumption, we can say, that this treatment will have this effect on this symptom or
Hmm.
this disease, whatever. We have to then apply the method and see. And sometimes it doesn't work. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. And you have to kind of take this non-emotional stance when you're testing it. If you
Hmm.
feel really emotionally invested in this working out and then it doesn't, you're going to be really disappointed. And so you have to take that assumption. I love the way you're using it from the engineering industry. It's
Yeah.
a placeholder and it needs verification.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
so so smart. And so why, Diana? Why do we not do this in our personal lives?
Right, exactly. That's why I created Neuroalchemy. That's exactly, it's like I want to blend all of this together. And so imagine that you are now the design engineer of your own life. We
Mm.
are all of design engineers of our internal systems to a certain extent, right? Like understanding, there's the childhood we go through, the programming, and then we get to a certain point where we could kind of reconfigure, redesign. It's examining again, what's the mental architecture, what have we inherited, and how do we now consciously redesign the mental, the emotional, and those energetic and spiritual systems that we've inherited. So I think that's what engineering teaches us, something very profound there. Don't treat
I
assumptions, they're not facts.
I think so too. And I think actually this is once again the conversation of awakening, right?
Yeah.
We go through the dream as long as we do, being given all of our agreements, being given all of our programming
Yeah.
from our religion, from our politics, from our families, from our culture. And at some point, you know, God willing, we get to a point where we realize, hey, what is this house that I'm living in? And do I want it? Do I like
Mm-hmm.
it? And I
Mm,
love that. I just wrote that down. What if I decide to become the design engineer of my own life?
mm,
What if I decide to become the architect now? What if I
mm.
decide I need to deconstruct that wall? I need to deconstruct that bathroom. I
Oh
need to
my gosh.
deconstruct this belief. I need to pull down this wallpaper.
Mm,
And I now have this great opportunity to choose who I want to be going forward, what I want my house to look like going forward. This
Yeah.
is the awakening that begins the individuation process. This is when
Mm,
you can blame your childhood, you can blame your religion, you can blame your society all you want.
right.
But if that's where you want to live, you're going to stay real stuck and real
Yeah.
unhappy. When you're ready, because sometimes it takes time to realize you are, when you're ready, when blame starts feeling kind of icky, when stuckness starts feeling a little yucky,
Mhm.
you have to decide, I have choice. You get
Mm,
to decide, I have choice. That doesn't work for me anymore. I'm going to leave it. That abuse that I suffered that created this way that my mind works now, I get to change it.
mm,
This is when all of your power you get to take back. If you choose,
right.
guess what? Life is a choice. It may not have felt like a choice up until this point, probably because it wasn't, but it is right now. If you're listening to this podcast and I'm telling you life is a choice, guess what?
Mhm.
You know now.
Right.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to the choice of becoming the design engineer of your life going
Right.
forward.
Right.
Ooh,
Right.
that makes me
I love
so happy.
it. It is. I mean, imagine if we think like this way, and we think like I'm engineering my own life and creating it. We instead of saying, "Oh, that person is upset with me," would say, this is an assumption. I need real data. I need real data here to back this up.
One of the main things that they do in cognitive behavioral therapy is to say, okay, go and gather evidence. How do you
Right.
know that's true? Right?
Mhm.
So you believe that's true. Now let's go gather the evidence. And so that's one of the
Uh-huh.
big questions is what's the evidence that that is true? And a
Right.
lot of the
Right.
time, what we're working on is we're working on people's cognitive distortions, which basically all means their assumptions. And we're saying now, okay, now
Yes.
go and tell me based on evidence why that's true. And a lot of the time, what people give back to me, oh, well, it's always been true. That's what that person thought. That's what this person thought. That's what. Okay, but what about what we're talking about right now? What about in this present moment? Do
Right.
you
Right.
have evidence that that is true? Maybe they do. Maybe they do. So then I'll say, okay, what's the evidence for and what's the evidence against? And more
Hmm.
often than not, there's way more evidence against the assumption than for
Yeah.
it. But the one for it has more emotion because it has more history. And
Hmm.
so it usually wins until you pull it outside of yourself and you look at it and you kind of then make the conscious decision. The conscious
Right.
decision says, actually, the evidence against means that I could probably go forward without this assumption.
Hmm.
But when you're all embroiled in your emotions and it's kind of unconscious processing that's leading you to your assumption, you'll be stuck in it. You'll be stuck in it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
go find the evidence for and against, and
Hmm.
then let's compare it. And
Yep.
I mentioned cognitive distortions because I think a lot of people don't realize that the way their mind is jumping to certain conclusions is a trick. It's what
Mm,
you're saying, it's what you're talking about. We have these predictions that we make
right.
in psychotherapy. We have a list of the most common cognitive distortions. And a lot of the time, I find it really helpful to point out to people, hey, when you're telling me this story, do you know if you're employing any cognitive distortions? And then my clients will get out their list that I've given them and they'll look through it and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm using that one and I'm using that one and I'm using that one. And once they've seen my mind might be playing tricks on me, they're able to more willingly engage in conversation that allows them to dislodge the assumption
Hmm.
and move
Okay.
forward into maybe I could gather the evidence. Diana's going to link a great list to the cognitive distortions so that people can have it for themselves to kind of look
Oh
at and
yeah.
compare. I will read it now and maybe we'll just put it up on the screen. I think we'll put it
Yeah.
up on the screen. So I'll read the list of cognitive distortions that are the most used, and you may want to listen in and think, do I use that?
Mm.
Okay. So the first one is all or nothing thinking. So that's often described as black and white thinking. A lot of people who employ perfectionism will land in this category. Then there's overgeneralization. So drawing broad conclusions based on a single event. This is a good one for if a person rejects you, you assume that everyone will. Mental filtering, focusing only on the negative aspects of a situation while ignoring the positive. Discounting the positive, rejecting positive experiences by insisting they don't count or downplaying their significance. So those are kind of
Mhm.
two that are very similar. Then there's jumping to conclusions, making
Mm.
negative interpretations without sufficient evidence. This often will include mind reading, which is my favorite one to point out, assuming that you know what other people are thinking. And it's
Mhm.
interestingly, particularly when you think someone's thinking something negative.
Mm.
Yeah. Notice that. And then there's also fortune telling. So predicting that things will turn out badly. We don't often
Mm.
predict that things will turn out in our
Right.
favor, interestingly. Then there's catastrophizing. I'm sure everybody knows about that one. So exaggerating the importance of the mistakes or the shortcomings or something that's happening. There's also minimization, emotional reasoning, assuming that your negative emotions reflect the way things really are. So I feel it, therefore it's true. You
Mm.
know, that's a
Mhm.
big assumption. That one even has assumption in the definition. Should statements, trying to motivate yourself with shoulds and shouldn'ts can lead to feelings of guilt and shame and resentment, or believing in shoulds for others. They should know what I need. They should do this thing. They should. And so what if they don't?
Oof.
Labeling, so assigning global negative labels to yourself or others based on single events. And personalization, taking responsibility for events that are not entirely your fault or believing that everything others do or say is a reaction to you. So, did any of those stand out to you as I was reading through them? Could you see how you employ
Uh,
some of those?
yeah, I mean, all of them. Right? They're all like you. I think everyone, as you listen through each one, you could come up with a scenario at some point in your life when you've used it.
Mhm.
Um, so those are powerful. That's a great list. That's a great
Yeah.
list to go through and kind of, yeah, reflect on.
Well, and it's a really helpful list to have because,
Yeah.
we all get up in our thoughts all the time. And I love the four agreements because the four agreements, if we live by them, they really stop all of this from happening. If I'm living by the
Mm.
agreement not to
Right.
assume, then I'm not going to assume that you think that or that they think this or that someone will do that. I'm not going to assume. I'm
Right.
gonna ask. I'm gonna clarify, right? It's also really good for shoulds, for labeling, they should do this, they shouldn't do that. Those people always behave this way. And as if that's a bad thing, there's a
Right.
whole different value system, there's a whole different culture that you don't understand. So you're judging a group or you're judging a situation by something you don't understand. So stop
Right.
assuming that you know. And if you're interested in why, go ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's what Don Miguel is essentially teaching us, right? Is like, don't treat assumptions like facts. Go validate reality. Go validate. Just
Yeah.
like design engineers do, right? If
Yeah.
they don't go validate, things go unchecked. If they're going to have problems in their design, that it's not going to work as it needed. The same principle applies to us emotionally. If you treat an emotional assumption as fact, your relationships, everything, it's going to start breaking down. It's going to be reflected back in a negative way if what you're assuming is all, these distorted types of thoughts that are not verified and validated.
Right. Right. And it's interesting because so much of this conversation is the assumptions that we make about others that affects our relationships and our way of being. But when I think about it and when I'm like reading through
Yeah.
this list, I realize what about the assumptions I make about myself? Like
Yeah.
when I fail at something, do I assume I will always fail at that thing? Do I
Right.
assume that I suck at that thing? I've always had this funny joke I'm terrible at technology. I don't know how to do that. And lately, and we've talked about this, I've been challenging that. I've decided not to hold that assumption anymore and to challenge it and to go and learn. Maybe I'm not good at it because I've never actually learned. And so
Right.
perhaps if I challenge the assumption, and I take a class or I practice or I fiddle
Mhm,
around with it, I might surprise myself. And so
mhm,
then my assumption is invalidated and I can actually release myself of the burden of being bad at technology and allow
mhm.
myself to become good at something.
Right,
How
right. Because
cool.
we tend to generalize, like, from this if this experience happened just one time, the rest of my experience is gonna be like this. I mean, it reminds me of my son too, like, he the first time he started jujitsu, that first entire class, he was crying, he was bawling, he was nervous, he was scared, he thought they were gonna attack him and, like, all these things, and he was really scared, and so if we would've just not taken him back, he would have assumed, like, I can't do anything. I'm gonna break down. I'm gonna cry, every time I go try something new. But we took him back and then he slowly softened up and he realized no one was attacking him. No one was there to like hurt him. He was really scared of people that were there to hurt him.
Mm,
And so now he is loving jujitsu. He's now playing basketball. He's like, I tried one thing, I'm gonna try another, and he's exploring, he's opened himself much more to more positive experience.
right.
I mean, just shows how if we generalize from one experience, it could really affect, it could be a downstream impact. It could be, a ripple effect to other decisions and other things in our lives.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great example. That's a really great example. If something goes wrong and I never go back, then I live with this assumption that it will always feel like that when I go try something new. So
Hmm.
instead, you keep going. Now, you guys are doing a great job parenting that. For those whose parents didn't do a great job parenting these types of things, guess what? You're now at a stage where you can reparent yourself. You
Oh,
can
I love that.
say, the history told me that this thing was too scary or this thing was too hard or whatever, and I never pushed through it. I wasn't parented to push through it. But don't use that now or anymore as an excuse not to learn, not to
Mm,
try. You can redesign. You can
hmm.
take that wall down. That's now this moment where you have choice again. I can choose to take myself back to that jujitsu class that I found scary and see if I can keep trying.
Hmm.
Be brave. Maybe I wasn't nurtured in that way, but I can re-nurture myself to do that now. What a beautiful moment for you to share the way you're parenting and give people inspiration to reparent themselves rather than feel so um, hurt that they weren't given the parenting that would give them what your son is getting.
Right. And I think this goes so much into the work. I think any listeners here, Carly, you teach people how to also be that compassionate person to themselves as they're reparenting. So,
That's
I
right.
mean, any listeners here that need that type of help and you're like, I don't know how to, Carly does provide that service that she could walk you through it. It's very great. And again, it's foundational stuff that is
Yeah.
needed for everything. The most important part of a foundation as we're doing this work and not working to making assumptions moving forward, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, finding a soft landing place within yourself is so important, and when
Yeah.
we're so critical and so judgmental of ourselves, we create a space in which we don't feel safe to learn. We don't feel
Right.
safe to fail. And guess what? Failing and falling down and struggling is part of the journey. It's not supposed to be easy, but we
Yeah.
are able to be kind to ourselves along the way. And if no one was ever kind to you, my heart breaks for you. And I offer you the opportunity to give yourself kindness the way that nobody ever did. You deserve it. You deserve
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. I think also, just to kind of conclude this conversation in a bit. I know we talked about, how design engineers, you need to verify the information. The way that we could go, turn our assumptions into like verifying our assumptions is the clarity that we bring. Like, how could we bring clarity into what we're assuming. And I think that's exactly what this third agreement invites you to put into practice, right? Instead of assuming, ask.
Mhm.
Just go and ask. Instead of predicting, clarify.
Mhm.
Instead of mind reading, as you mentioned, communicate.
Mhm.
And then instead of projecting, let's return to presence. Let's
Oof.
return to truth.
Yes.
And we can restore our safety, our connection, our emotional accuracy, and our our sovereignty.
Mhm. Yeah, those are beautiful points. And I think that's exactly where we need to leave it this week. With those points, you can put these things into practice right away. It's okay if
Mhm.
it feels awkward. Meet yourself with compassion, right? Meet yourself with compassion. If you forget, it's okay. There's always tomorrow. Meet yourself with compassion. Thank you for spending this time with us today. If this conversation resonated with you, helped you feel seen, or expanded something in you, we would love for you to stay connected. Make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who's also awakening on their journey. And if you feel called, please leave us a comment. It helps this message reach more people who are realigning with their truth, and it helps us feel connected to you. You can always reach out to us or join the conversation at realignedpod@gmail.com. We are building a community of humans waking up inside the dream, and we're so grateful you're part of it. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and stay realigned.